Your company network has been penetrated. All your important files have been encrypted. This is the ransom note from a recent ransomware case that our Security Operations Center got to dig into. This is a real ransom note, includes a personal ID for the victim and the target. Of course, I've redacted that here. And the ransom note continues, hey, your files are safe, only modified with RSA and AES encryption. Any attempt to restore your files with third-party software will permanently corrupt it. Do not modify encrypted files, do not rename encrypted files. All the usual fear-mongering you would expect from a ransom note and ransomware intrusion. So I know what you might be thinking. It's just the usual classic cookie-cutter, run-of-the-mill ransomware. And that is a component, but I think there are some other interesting parts of this attack chain that I did want to share with you. I'll tell you more about the investigation, but I do want to cruise through more of this ransom note because I hope that's some good education. It says here, we gathered highly confidential and personal data. This data is currently stored on a private server, but it will be immediately destroyed after you pay the ransom. And this is boilerplate, right? This is the same template, the same sort of ransom note you would find from any different victim, all with an intrusion and encryption by this ransomware family, the ransom variant or the ransomware gang. Of course, you've got the blackmail and extortion here. If you decide not to pay, we'll release your data to the public or another reseller, so you can expect your data to be publicly available out on the open internet in the near future. We only seek money, and our goal is not to damage your reputation or prevent your business from running. Yeah, okay. Little bit of a side effect there. But they are trying to get a 5-star Yelp review. It says, look, you can send us 2 to 3 non-important files and we'll decrypt it for free, just to prove we're able to give your files back. They gotta get those 5 stars, good reviews. If you wanted to contact them for the price, the actual ransom, what you might have to pay in Bitcoin or Monero or whatever cryptocurrency getaway car, and if you wanted to, you'd reach out over email with ithelp15 at securitymynameuShelter.com, and they suggest, genuinely, literally suggest, creating a free email address with protonmail.com. Little urgency here, if you don't contact us within 72 hours, the price will be higher. But they also include a little bit of a Tor or dark web onion link if you want to try to chat with them in real time. So we could go visit this with our browser. I can open up the Tor browser, which you would need to access any of those .onion links or URLs. It'll connect to Tor, and with that, we could try to go access that link and that .onion address. In my case, it's not tracking this down. It says onion site not found, most likely offline. So you're out of luck. SOL, trying to chat with the ransomware operators in real time. So I have a couple files from the investigation here that we can dig into. Of course, the ransomware malware itself, some stagers, and I did want to note some of the persistence mechanisms or footholds. Of course, the ransom note was actually named How to Back Files, all separated by underscores. And this is actually, even just the name of the ransom note, one little indicator or breadcrumb that might help clue in what ransomware gang or variant this is. Some of you might have recognized that ransom note and said, hey, that's Medusa. MedusaLocker, the Medusa variant of ransomware, but actually, this one is specifically ReadText, which I had not heard of before, truth be told. There's an article out on PCRisk.com. I don't see this site all too often, but way back in September of last year, they noted this ReadText ransomware is a variant and part of the MedusaLocker ransomware family. In this real-world case study, we did see files encrypted, all compromised, and added and appended a new .readtext extension. They note here the value 4, or just a number that could very well indicate the version of whatever ransomware encryptor or build that they use. And they note the very same how-to-back-files.html ransom note that we saw just as well. So all this is really in line with everything that we've observed. And look, they're digging into exactly that. The version number may vary based off of whatever build that it could be. We saw ReadText34, which is kind of wild if it is in fact a version number. They include all the very same email addresses that we saw and a little bit more insight. If you wanted to do your homework, maybe Google, research, learn a little bit more about Medusa ransomware, again being the variant for ReadText, that is something that, look, we could track down and see a whole lot of other research, write-ups, articles, some of that sweet threat intel from a ton of other vendors and cybersecurity players across the industry. But for our case, please let me say, look, we got to observe this as the ransomware had already happened. So I don't have all the insights on the initial access vector or how the threat actor gained their original control and compromise of the network. But we do, of course, detect the ransomware itself and a lot of the other behavior. Hey, any other processes that ran, some of the persistent footholds, implants, beacons, the scheduled tasks, and auto runs persistence mechanisms that I do want to show you. Because at least from the Windows Event Viewer logs, I took a little bit of notes here, and we could see, look, the administrator account, the local administrator on that computer, that endpoint and host, was logged into from another host in the local area network. 192.168, whatever, but unfortunately, our agent is not on there, and we don't have all the visibility to paint the picture and get more insights. But this host that we are trying to track down the breadcrumbs for, we can see what they did. First things first, they ran a couple commands to give themselves more access with RDP, or that remote desktop protocol. Now this is pretty clear cut. I'm sure you've seen this all the time before. Simple reg add command you might see from the command prompt, cmd.exe, tweaking the registry, and they've got that admin permission so they can manipulate the HKey local machine hive, system, current control set, control, terminal server, and the value that they mess with is this fdeny ts connections, setting that to a 0 for a regd word type. That allows, hey, a little bit more connectivity. That on its own is probably worth a detector, worth firing off alarm bells and sirens to see some other activity, or at least question what's going on there. But you might know that I love to think about the persistence mechanisms. The implants, the beacons, the hooks and claws. How did the threat actor and the adversary maintain access? Because if you can track that down, you basically have the smoking gun. Hey, there is evil here, there is malware, and something that we can definitively say bad news bears. Now, there were two services that were created. Services still running as the computer starts up, as logged in. Hey, it does what it does. One that calls another executable and binary slapped into C:\Windows called WinPPX. And another one would handle a kernel driver named TrueSight. That I'm excited to chat about because it's one of those bring your own vulnerable driver scenarios. So these were some breadcrumbs, but look, I want to tell you more about these footholds. So I made a big list here. Look, there was our foothold number one. That's that TrueSight kernel driver, actually staged over into Trend Micro, a folder set up in their roaming app data directory. You'll note here the file truesight.sys, that .sys file extension, at least cluing us in, that's a kernel driver. Foothold 2 was that WinPPX that I was alluding to, and those were the services, but there are some other auto runs, like actually created with some startup programs and applications in that path. C, program data, Microsoft Windows Start Menu Program Startup, WinPPX again, and even then, the ransomware itself. ReadText34.exe that would do all the encryption, do all the grunt work, and actually encrypt all the files on the hard drive. This had a registry key and all that set with the name MedusaLocker KZ, which is curious and something we could go Google and research again. No special tricks here. I'm going to look for MedusaLocker KZ. And the first couple stuff comes up as Trend Micro, which is interesting. You saw that path for the kernel driver here. We can open that one up. I will say that Trend Micro was the other security tool on that host and seemingly across that network and in that org. And that'll end up kind of taking the place of Windows Defender, I believe, in most cases. That's will take priority as the security tooling staged. But this is all tracking for MedusaLocker. Again, associated and related to our ReadText ransomware. Looking at a couple other results here, Cynet has some write-up on Hazard ransomware, which I believe is another variant of MedusaLocker and whatever they're cooking up. You can see some others from SaferWall, and a report from AnyRun that might be super duper helpful. Let me click into that, and we can then start to do some of our own analysis of these binaries. We'll do some light, simple, small static analysis, like super surface level, because there's no way to do all that reverse engineering in a YouTube video, truthfully, and I'm not good at it. I still got a heck of a lot to learn in that reverse engineering world, digging into a disassembler, debugger, and all that. So we'll press the easy button here if just for the sake of showcase, but I'm excited to see what AnyRun might be able to cook up if we did some dynamic analysis. And if you haven't heard of AnyRun before, I'd love to tell you a little bit about it because they are the sponsor of today's video. AnyRun. AnyRun is a cloud-based interactive malware sandbox, all within your browser. You can analyze threats instantly, download the latest samples or detailed reports, and easily spin up the latest operating systems for testing, like Windows 10 or Windows 11 in either 32-bit or 64-bit architecture, and even Ubuntu Linux. Got a sample of malware you want to see in action? Need to easily share findings with colleagues or members of your team? You can choose the privacy settings of tasks, and you can customize just about every part of the sandbox. Between the starting directory of your malware sample, web browsers and other applications installed, and even network proxies like Tor or VPNs or geolocation. In the Show More feature for additional information, you can track down indicators of compromise, Suricata rule triggers with their source and field data for network detection, dropped files and artifacts in the static discovering window, and advanced details of process execution and script tracing, and even a populated MITRE attack matrix to see what techniques are deployed. All this enables detection efforts right away. And AnyRun proves itself as a source of deeper threat analysis and security insights. Within just a few seconds, you have answers to your research. AnyRun is committed to make the process of malware research easy, fast, and efficient for specialists by simplifying their work. You can try AnyRun for free with my link below in the video description, jh.live/AnyRun. Huge thanks to AnyRun for sponsoring this video. Alright, so before we sprinkle in some of that baby basic static analysis and some of the dynamic analysis, I do want to touch on that TrueSight kernel driver, because that's kind of interesting. I mentioned that was included in a trend micro directory in the roaming app data for the individual user. But the TrueSight driver is actually worth discussing because it's included in loldrivers.io. Now, if you're not familiar, this is another phenomenal resource, much like lolbins, lolbash, GTFO bins in the Linux world, but it's living off the land kernel drivers. I've got to chat with some of the maintainers in some other previous videos, but it's super cool. A curated list of Windows drivers used by adversaries, threat actors, and hackers to bypass security controls and carry out attacks. Oftentimes, the adversary will literally just bring their own vulnerable driver, so they've got that more root kernel level access for the damage that they might do. This is all community maintained, so you can take a look at all of the sweet .sys kernel drivers that are included, and even contribute and add your own if you find any sweet stuff to add to the insight. Let me go track down TrueSight.sys though. You can see here with a SHA-256 hash available. They note in the description, this is actually pulled from a GitHub repository that we'll check out in just a second, but it's used as a AV and EDR, so antivirus and endpoint detection response killer, using this rogue anti-malware driver 3.3. At the time of this GitHub repository coming to life, it's not present in the LOL drivers or Windows block list. And they note, hey, why they're making this public, what to do here, blah, blah, blah. And you can see how that's actually staged and oftentimes used. Look, SC to create a service, that old school cmd.exe command prompt there. I know in PowerShell, that's like a set content alias, so don't get too tripped up. But this would stage a service just like we saw in that activity for this ransomware incident, where it sets up the bin path to the location of the TrueSight driver, noting that it is a kernel type, and goes ahead and starts the service. If you want to take a look at some of the detection capability, they do include Yara, Sigma rules, Sysmon stuff that you could work with, but the resources is what I wanted to touch on, because that README, the little description that we saw just a moment ago, came from this GitHub repository called DarkSide. It's the C# AV and EDR killer using a lesser known bring your own vulnerable driver technique. So they include a solution file you could fire up with Visual Studio, cool picture of a Darth Vader samurai, I guess. And this proof of concept, the actual tool, what's enabled here with DarkSide, the little executable, you could pass in a PID or a process ID. And look, it doesn't exactly tell you what the heck it does, but we could just take a look at the source code. Program.cs, the C# source. There are a couple DLL import signatures to be able to grab some Win32 API function calls, specifically the device IO control. And those are those little bits that let you communicate and work with kernel drivers. So it actually has a function here to check process, whether it's actually running and available. Get process ID will end up tracking it down, but the main function looks like it'll take in the arguments, try to parse through them, check if that process is actually running, and then it'll use the device handle that's going to work with for the TrueSight driver. And after it gets a handle, it'll actually send that device IO control the terminate process ioctl code. So pretty clear cut, just offering the capability to kill, shut down, destroy, and delete whatever running process you specify. That's pretty handy if you've got that kernel level privilege to just say, look, antivirus, EDR, whatever security tooling, yeah, turn that off. Now, bear in mind, this is only the dark side proof of concept. What the threat actor might end up doing, we didn't even get to see how they would interact with and use this TrueSight.sys driver, but I thought that was a pretty sweet tidbit to actually have it included as part of the attack chain. Anyway, let's start to dig into some of the executables that we know were part of the problem here just as well. We had that winppx.exe, and we had the ReadText34.exe, the ransomware detonator itself. Now, I had started a Ghidra project here, again, just like scratching the surface, literally not doing anything other than analyzing the files so we could take a look at them. But look, let's take a look at that app data roaming ReadText34.exe, the ransomware itself. We could probably take a guess that, look, it's going to use some of those old Win32 API functions to encrypt and manipulate the file system. If you wanted to drag yourself through the assembly, you could just as well, or take a look at some of the attempted decompilation efforts. And I know, again, it's just baby basic stupid stuff. You don't even need to be in Ghidra for this, but I do want to note, if you were to take a look at the strings, you could at least find your way to some interesting parts of the application. And maybe you'll find some other neat little breadcrumbs left behind just as well. Because if you were clicking through any of the functions, any of the imports and exports, or even some of the program tree information here, you will see debug data in this case. They actually left behind what looks like the PDB or the symbols for what the heck they would be using, how this was compiled, how it was all built. Note this string here. In the I drive, the directory locker bin and then stub winx64 encryptor.pdb. Cool. Just a little bit of a breadcrumb and probably some that would work well for a Yara rule to help signature this thing. But droning through all the disassembly in Ghidra or IDA or Binary Ninja or whatever, and all the reverse engineering work that we could do that will take a lot of time, look, it might not be all that interesting for us in the direction of static analysis. So what's to stop us from just throwing this into a sandbox and getting some of that dynamic analysis to get answers fast? I honestly, personally, would just end up testing this thing within any run. Not even them being a sponsor of this video, that's just the analysis that I'd like to do for the quick and easy button. So let me go ahead and start to analyze these files. We can click on this and upload the winppt, winppx, whatever.exe. This is what we could start with. We'll dig down into the ReadText34.exe ransomware itself in just a second. But look, kind of the convenience thing here. I will upload the zip archive itself so we could extract that even just from the desktop. And I'll make this private only to me. And I think that 60-second duration is fine. We can always add time whenever we need it. So let me run a private analysis and get this thing cruising. We could be doing this maybe on our own with Process Monitor or API Monitor, or trying to do red shot back and forth and trying to hook and see, okay, what files does this drop, what it might do, but this is going to be nice and easy if we kind of cruise through it. Looks like we can open up WinZip or WinRAR to just extract this out, and this is the benefit of the interactive dynamic sandbox. We can click into this and go ahead and play with it. I know the display isn't all that sharp right now because I am zoomed in just to help make sure this is visible for you, but once that's done, we can go ahead and extract and run the executable at the end here. Let me rename this to make sure that it has that .exe extension at the end. Now, if I fire this up, I click enter, and you'll see it starting to go crazy. Here, I'll move my face just to the side, so because I know there's action over on the right-hand side of the screen. And before I run out of time here, let's go ahead and add a little bit more, just to see if this might keep cruising. WinRAR, of course, is what we started with. When we fire up our winppx.exe, we'll note that it actually starts cmd.exe. There's a whole nother sub-process here that's doing some shady stuff, using netexe to start a service, probably something to stage that service that we saw. Same thing with sc.exe. And we could even take a look at the files that it writes in the access here. Also does some BCD edit work, which is probably, disabling integrity checks and opening the door for us to be able to use the kernel driver like TrueSight in place. There it creates the winppx and starts it up. I'm curious because I do see cmd.exe still running over here, and I'll move my face even further to the side so we can see, are there any strange looking HTTP requests, anything of a connectivity that it accesses out on the internet. All this looks kind of normal and natural, nothing from the processes that we started, but worthwhile to explore. DNS requests, nothing else right now, but we might get a little bit more insight if we actually take a look at what files were dropped. I'll bounce back over to the right side of the screen here, and with that, let me take a look at the files, because WinRAR was an action to get us started, but the actual executable did drop a batch script. Neat. If we click on the content here, we could actually take a look at that with the static discovering, which is kind of cool because we get to see what all it ran, even just a simple script in this case. But @shift/0, I've never seen that at the start of a batch script. Have you? Normally it's like @echo off. What is that supposed to do? You could ask ChatGPT even like inside of any run, but only if it's a public sample, and I do want to make this private to myself, but you could just, I don't know, ask ChatGPT if we wanted to. What the heck is this? Might be hard to Google @shift/0. What does this Windows command do? We'll enter that there. The shift/0 command is used in batch scripting on Windows to adjust the positional parameters of a batch script. Specifically, shift is a command used to shift the command line arguments for a batch script. So if you had a script with parameters %1, %2, %3, etc., shift will move them to the left. So %2 becomes %1, 3 becomes... Why? Why? What use? What purpose does that serve? /0 option is used with shift to specify that no positional parameters should be shifted. That does not do anything. Okay. Is that just to throw off some like signatures? Not having an @echo off, but something still with an at the front? That's weird. Whatever, I'm sorry, I'm falling down the rabbit hole, but I just thought that one was interesting. More of the good stuff is here though, right? We can see the actual BCD edit command where it is disabling integrity checks. Is that $D2? Is that a typo? Can I just run it on my host? Let's try it in the virtual machine. We could also play with shift if we wanted to. It is all kind of exploratory for us, right? What does shift do? And I'm in PowerShell. Let me make sure I'm in cmd.exe. Shift. Okay. Shift. Help me. Change the position of replacement parameters of batch file. Why? Whatever. How about that BCD edit command? What will that do? Would need to be admin. Let me user account control this one. Yeah. Okay. I guess that works just fine with an extra. Maybe I'm crazy or I'm just dumb. Let me know in the comments. You don't have to let me know in the comments. I already know I'm dumb. Then it copies the executable that would be in the current directory into the startup folder, so that is now an auto run, little tiny persistence mechanism, copies it into Windows just as well, creates the service, and what is this svhost.exe? That's not service host. It's trying to hide something there. TAC connect 94.198.50.195. Go into an IP address and a port with a password credential there. TAC rect5. We could explore what that is because anyone has captured and caught the svhost.exe. We want to take a look at the executable. It's just a binary. It's another executable, so there's not a lot interesting stuff we could get from there, but we could at least ask virus total. See a link up here if you want to analyze it just as well or download it from anyone you could. But taking a look at virus total, what does that tell us? Oh, okay. It's lighting up like a Christmas tree. 50 out of 74. Matches rules for Yara on a RebSox utility. Ooh. And that's all over the place. Yep, Redcap, Trojan, generic, variants here, hack tool, proxy tool, RebSox. What are the community insights? Okay, Thor, Yara Scanner, good old Nextron Systems, and Florian Roth. Incredible stuff that he's up to. Everyone's saying, look, it's RebSox. Okay, so a reverse proxy stage and setup. I'm assuming that's going to end up giving them some other access and capability to work with the host if they need to, or just, have more RDP capability since they staged that previously in one of the intro commands that we saw. That is neato and paints a little bit of the picture for us. Oh, by the way, I would want to mention, if you took a look at the network tab back in connections, you would be able to see all the communication back and forth with that IP address. You can see here that svhost.exe executable was communicating with that IP address, 94.198.50 whatever, at port 25,000. Looks like it didn't track down a domain for it and wasn't actually able to get any traffic. So I'm assuming that is offline, but I guess it's a server in Estonia. Had it been there, you'd be able to click into it just like any of the others to actually open up and see either the hex bytes that are sent back and forth or, when possible, like the plain text communication. I think scrolling down, we could see one that's a fine example, and that actually you can see like the full GET request to download something one way or another. But obviously, if that were part of the communication, you would see it. It's pretty cool that anyone is tracking all that PCAP network data just as well. But that is not the ransomware. We knew WinPPX was in the mix, but the ReadText34.exe is really where stuff goes wrong. So let's start another analysis and let me get that one cooking. ReadText34.zip, so we have the archive and we can invoke it as we would like. We can just drop it in the desktop so it's easy and make that private to me. Let's do it up. Now, this is the ransomware. We'll see this start to encrypt and do damage on the host. So let me extract this to the desktop. And now I have no fear of actually executing this because it's in a cloud sandbox. Like, I would still be a little bit sketched out running this in my own virtual machine. Of course, look, I doubt there's going to be a VM escape. That's very rare. It exists, right? It's totally a thing, but not something that I would be too sketched out about. At least having the capability to do this in a sandbox is kind of awesome though. And I love that Anyrun makes that all available in your browser, and it's got all this tooling and telemetry to see this all in action just as well. Whoa, that has a whole command prompt firing up. Oh, it's so hard to read the text. I'm sure it'll come through, but like, look at everything on the side. Move my face. Just a couple seconds left, and I don't think we'll need to finish it over because it's going to take whatever time it takes to do the ransomware, actually loop, iterate through, and encrypt all the files. And then we could actually see a little bit better of what that text was as I display it and walk through the video here. Once it's extracted, once I have it renamed, once I fire it up, we can see the command prompt open, and that looks like at the start, it gives us, some paths. Those look like Linux paths, though. Program added to auto start. Whoa, we're moving too fast. It's grabbing environment variables like the all users profile, the Windows directory, public desktop, and then keys saved to registry. Actual debug output as this malware and ransomware is running. Context initialized. Can't open what would be the ransom note quite yet. That's odd. And then we can see, running commands to kill SQL browser. Oh, goodness. And we'll have to take a look at this and a lot of the artifacts at the end there. But then it runs an ASIC command cipher /w:\\. What is that? Sorry, I know my face is totally looking at a different monitor over there when I'm displayed now over on the left side of the screen. So it tags this as Medusa. You can see the ransomware is actually going to have a couple little alerts here. Look, it's tracking some of the capability, like paid memes being added to the software industry. It's just trying to read that registry key. What else is it doing? Wait, also reads private, also writes private with a big value here that looks like base 64. But that is the private key, and there's the public key that it all writes to be able to do the encryption, right? Asymmetric encryption. I'm curious if that's still going to be like an artifact that's left over. But at least anyone already tracked it down. Look, it's a variant of Medusa ransomware. You can see the capability and even the MITRE attack technique tracking with our MedusaLocker KZ. Yep. Staging some auto run and persistence there, starting cmd.exe to run these things, usual stuff. But the process chain here went bonkers, killing all of these processes. SQL kill. If I wanted to look at more of the information here, we could click on into it. I'll hop back over to the right. But look, we see our readtext.exe actually spawn cmd.exe with that command to rem kill. So maybe that was a comment, but it does do a task kill for real on SQL browser. Same thing for another SQL browser. SQL writer, interesting. SQL Server. A lot of the stuff just trying to, try to remove some probably applications that will have potential write operations already in access. Like already in action if it's a database that's, trying to work with info, flying back and forth one way or another. That would either get in the way of some ransomware work trying to encrypt the contents of files. So probably just trying to kill, nerf, and stop a lot of those capabilities. After a lot of the task kill calls, we actually see it run net and net1 to stop, more services, stop some of the things that it doesn't want running, more MySQL instances or any Postgres database stuff. And then, VSSadmin.exe. Nice. The VSS admin one I knew. Look, again, I'm acting, I gotta say. I'm putting on the show to say, look, I haven't seen these before, but the VSS admin capability was deleting all the volume shadow copies that are totally like classic ransomware technique. Trying to remove potential backups, trying to make sure that they are unable to recover. So deleting any of the volume shadow copy backups that Windows might naturally take is just the classic stuff you'd see. I'm curious what this WB admin delete backup is, though. What does this command do? Oh, that's literally just Windows Server's backup utility. And it's just deleting all of it. Make sure there are no backups. Without asking for confirmation, it shuts it all down. So it's doing everything that it can to help ruin this instance. Make sure you cannot get your files back. Delete system state backup. Delete oldest. I'm sure trying to get rid of like system restore points. Anything that it might be able to do. Yep, kill a lot of the shadow copies here. BCD edit once again. Ooh, that's got to be some more of the sweet stuff too. Okay, remove recovery mode, boot status policy, ignore all failures, so it will boot regardless of there being issues with some of the potential kernel drivers that are added in. And Cypher is interesting. Cypher.exe. This, and let me pull back the curtain again. This is the one that I thought was super duper cool. I think this might be one of the staples of showcasing this malware and really why I wanted to record this video, because Cypher is not a command that I had even just known of or heard of before. But if you are on your Windows host, and if you were to open up cmd.exe, right, we'll go ahead and full screen this thing. If I were to run Cypher, it's gonna dump a lot of details out that aren't super duper clear. It says listing the current directory that I'm in. New files added to this directory will not be encrypted. Okay, so let me ask, what the heck is Cypher? Question mark / on that. We could take a look at the description, some of the help information. It tells me that Cypher is actually a tool to display or alter the encryption of files or directories on NTFS partitions. So this is capability for Windows EFS, or the encrypting file system. Actually using the functionality like totally native, natural, inherent, and built-in work that Windows can do to encrypt information, data, files. Usually used for good intention, but in this case, actually ill intent and malware. They were using that /w argument. You could see a whole lot of the other things you might be able to do with it. Display information on encrypted files, decrypts the specified files and directories. But what was that /w? Removes data from available unused disk space on the entire volume. If this option is chosen, all other options are ignored. The directory specified can be anywhere in a local volume if it's a mount point, blah, blah, blah. Oh, so what that means is that when you delete a file, like on your computer, if you were to just create a text file, hello world, and then you delete it, you aren't getting rid of the content stored in like allocated space in the file system. It's just going to unallocate or deallocate that. The material is still there, it's just not kind of tagged or identified, so your computer knows what to do with it or how to find it. You can kind of parallel it to the recycle bin, even though it's not exactly that. Just, the low-level data bits on your file system and hard drive. So on Linux, you're probably used to like the command shred. That'll end up just overwriting some content, some data, something, all with null bytes or zeros, so that it won't actually ever be able to be recovered. It sounds like Cypher with /w is actually going to do exactly that. And you specify, probably the syntax that we saw was like a / question mark. I think just some long form representation of a drive or a volume that you specify. And if I were an admin here, did I get that wrong? Maybe another / there? Yeah. There we go. You can see it's writing hex 0. So it's just going to write null bytes and clobber absolutely everything that would have been deleted data. I don't know about you, but I thought that was kind of neat, cutesy, and different thing I hadn't seen a ransomware variant in Strain do before, especially not using this built-in native capability of Windows. It's also pretty sinister, pretty dirty. Because if files were to be deleted just normally and naturally, then hey, if you were to use any forensics tooling and maybe actually take apart the NTFS metadata, stuff you could actually extract and carve out, maybe you could potentially recover files. But using Cypher and this technique here, it makes recovering files impossible. Now this is going to take a long time, right? And we didn't see it finish over on any run in our dynamic sandbox, because exactly that, it'll take some time. But what we got to see in all the process execution of the incident in the case that we were digging into, we could see the invocation of Cypher brute forcing every single drive letter, like A:, B:, C:, your usual hard drive, but D, E, F, G, H, I, all of the different possible letters and volumes to make sure, let's just try to obliterate whatever we can. Now, I don't know exactly what value that might bring to the case of ransomware encrypting the data, but if you saw any of the artifacts or stuff that it might have used to stage its operations and work, like the private key, public key, stuff that it might have left behind, again, and once it cleans itself up, now getting rid of that is even tucked away further. Maybe it's just me, but I thought that was pretty cool. Cypher.exe, again, like a lol bin, not really a lol bin because that's intended functionality, but literally just using it to do some damage in a ransomware incident in case. With all that said, hey, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a little bit of something while we got to put together the puzzle pieces here. And I know it's a little bit all over the place because you're looking back in time, but it's fun to try to put the big picture together and make sense of all the evidence in an investigation like this. So thanks. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do all those YouTube algorithm things, like, comment, subscribe, and please, pretty please, do give some love to our sponsor. Seriously, AnyRun is incredible and is literally my go-to tool whenever I just want all the insight, all the details, really seeing what's going to happen with some file, some executable, some program and malware to know, look, what is it going to do and what does it do next and what else can I dig into? Like everything that we were able to see in the file modifications and in the WinPPX example, looking at that batch script that it dropped. But in the case of ransomware, you're seeing all of the changes made and like the now .ReadText34 extension added on to every single thing that it encrypts. So there's a lot there, but you might be able to see other pieces of the puzzle that are helpful and worthwhile for you. All right, I'm done rambling. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next video.